Welcome to the San Ramon Valley Unified School District's Board of Education special meeting. We want the public to know that we are video recording this meeting. The recording is being live streamed on the district's YouTube channel. So we'll start with a call to order to wake everyone up. And let's take attendance.
Hello, I'm Rachel Hurd, trustee for Area 5.
Good morning, I'm Jesse Van Zee, trustee for Area 1.
Good morning, this is Susanna Ordway and I'm representing Area 4.
Good morning, I'm Shelley Clark and I represent Area 2.
And I'm Laura Bratt and I represent Area 3. So next we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is the acceptance of open session agenda. Can I get a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Hurd and seconded by Board Member Clark. Roll call vote. Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Van Zee.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
All right, great. We'll move on to 4.0 discussion, and then we do have action if needed. So we do have that on the agenda. And I believe the leadership associates will come online. All right, and next we'll move to 4.1 superintendent search process. So that's with leadership associates. And I'd like to introduce Dennis Smith, Sally Fraser, sorry, I apologize. It's really early and even earlier thanks to the time change.
Yes.
And Jackie Hors, I know, Horse. So I guess you're going to start with an overview of the process. Is that correct?
We can't. Yes, we'll do that. And thank you, board members, for being so diligent on a Monday morning at 8 a.m. We thank you for that. And there was such a productive meeting last week. I think we got a lot accomplished that's on this agenda. So we'll kind of work through this, but some of it's already been done. I know this is being streamed live, so I thought maybe it'd be helpful for the audience. We did just a very brief introduction of ourselves. My name is Dennis Smith. I'm the managing search lead partner. I was a superintendent for 26 years and have been doing this work since I retired, and it's been about 10 or 12 years now. And I do searches across the state, as do my colleagues. And I had the pleasure of doing the search when Dr. Malloy came into the district just 4 years ago. Sally?
I'm Sally Fraser, and I spent 24 years as Madera County Superintendent of Schools and have also been with Leadership Associates over 10 years now. And I've had the pleasure and honor of working with your board on the last 3 superintendent searches. So I'm very delighted to be back. Jackie?
And my name is Jackie Horsch. I was a superintendent in San Jose for 9 years. And I actually had the privilege of working with John when I did a superintendent leadership series up in Contra Costa. So I'm familiar with the area as well.
Right. Well, thank you. So President Bratt, we'll just kick it off. And I know that the board has everything electronically, and then you also have hard copies of the agenda. So the first is just a discussion and review of the search process. And I think basically we did that the last time. We went through the different stages of that, and the board seemed to be very comfortable with that. And so I think we'll just move through this. And if at any point in time you want us to talk more about that, we'll do it. Sally's going to go through the timeline, and that really illustrates the search process pretty well. So is that acceptable?
Yes, that's great.
Okay, good. And then the second one is just to designate a liaison and spokesperson. So we generally work with the entire board, meaning communications go to the entire board. But there's always going to be times when, of course, we're going to, probably work closely with Cindy Fisher, but also we have to call somebody, and oftentimes the board president, to get clarification on a particular issue. So how would you like to have that work as a board?
I'm comfortable being that person if that's okay with the rest of the board. Okay, great.
Okay, so then, and what we will do, and it may not be a lot, but there are just times when we'll just have to communicate on certain aspects of the search and then, but what happens is we'll then send communication out to the entire board, but you're our point person if we need something right away. And we know Cindy Fisher has already been very, very actively engaged. And so Penny Pyle, our administrative assistant, and Cindy Fisher will be working closely. And I think they've already been doing that. So that's sort of the communication pipeline that we have set up for the search.
Great, thank you.
Okay, good. And then I know number 3, Cindy Fisher's had all the guidelines and templates from Leadership Associates, and just to confirm, with Cindy, is there anything that she may not have that is needed at this time?
No, I don't believe so. Thank you.
Good. And then number 4 is the trustee emails. I think we have that, but what might be really helpful is to make sure that we get a communication out, and we can do it, or Cindy can do that, where you have all of our emails and contact information, and we have yours.
Dennis, this is Cindy. I'm happy to do that.
All right, that would be great. And then so then we have that all addressed. And then number 5 is the use of input. We're going to be involved, and Cindy's already working on that, and Peg, Sally will talk a little bit more about that on stakeholder inputs groups, and also the online survey. And the online survey is up on the screen right now. But I think and we use all of that to develop the position description. But Cindy, if you could go to the stakeholder input groups. So the board. So we have 3 days planned, or actually 2 days, but it's actually the equivalent of 3. March 20th, March 25th, and then March 25th, because Jackie Horsch and I will be working together. And these are the groups we've identified, and these can be one-on-one or small groups. But maybe as a board, just look through that and see if we've left anything off, or if something needs to be changed.
I want to make sure that we do have a student senate. And that includes both middle school and high school, so secondary representatives. And they meet monthly, I believe, on Fridays. And so I would love to include them specifically and if that falls under the 11, or if that's a separate item. And then obviously we have our student board member, which I believe you have listed as student board rep.
Okay, so maybe we'll refer to the student board member. And yes, so we could actually look at combining, or not combining, but having that group that you described on the Friday, or send them out an invitation and they can do it at a point in time where they can all log in online, maybe after school. But that's really good. We'll make a notation of that.
So maybe we're sort of editing number 11, so it says student senate and student board rep.
Yeah, and I don't know if we want to also include students who, I don't know, like.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a pretty big group.
Yeah,
because it ends with
yeah.
Student senate, but I'd also kind of hate to exclude some other student leaders if.
Right, and maybe it's
John Campo could help us identify those.
Yeah, and maybe it's looking at affinity groups and leadership, as components.
Yeah.
As well as the Senate. So maybe not all the affinity groups, but the leaders of or designees.
I think we need to go with leaders.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're not trying to sync up with their meeting. This is an addition, so.
Yeah.
Dennis, would you mind talking a little bit with the board about the 2 options where there are meetings in person, but that the majority of these meetings will be virtual, and so that the board understands that there's 2 options for everyone?
That's right. Thank you. Yeah. So the 25th, and this would, because Jackie Horsch is just down the road. We have all these. Most of the what we found is online input's been the strongest response, but there are still individuals who want to come and do it in person, and there may be a community meeting where that works best. And so the 25th is designed for any in-person opportunities. And we're going to work with Cindy to kind of get a flavor for which groups may take place. But the 20th, the 25th, and then the 25th are all input, but the 25th, one of us will be there to do in person as needed and requested. Is that
Yeah,
sufficient?
you were saying that this is going to be a combination of in-person and online surveys?
Well, thank you for clarifying that. It's the online is, or the survey is all online. That'll be open for, I think it's 10 days. It's on our, so that's completely online, and that's where we get our strongest response. You know, in Santa Rosa, we could get 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 responses, and that they identify themselves. It's anonymous, but they identify themselves as a parent or a teacher or a student. So that's completely online survey. But then these stakeholder groups that you see on the screen, this is all by invitation to come in small groups or individually to meet with us to have a conversation, just like we're having right now. And that can be primarily Zoom, but we also have the opportunity for in-person input.
Thank you.
With regard to the survey, and I'm thinking of this just because it related to our calendar survey. Do we want to have a category that is for people who are both staff and parents, or do we ask them to fill it out twice from both perspectives? It's just a subtle thing, but it could affect, you know, kind of how the results work. And I don't know what the right answer is or what you guys usually do, but I think leaning into that type of individual is an important perspective, that it may be different than the other perspectives.
Yeah, staff and parent. Sally or Jackie, do you have any comment on that?
Typically, when someone responds, they may choose one or more categories. So as we get the full results, we're not getting, these are all the teacher results, these are all of the parent results. We're getting the community results, but we get an idea of what percentage of the input was from what group of people. So someone may be both a parent and a community member. Or a parent and a volunteer, or classified and a parent. But we just compile it because the themes tend to come across the board, but you'll have an idea of what percentage came from parents, what percentage came from community members or students.
Okay. In this list, we've got several of our big parent or community groups, you know, called out separately, like PTA, for example, and I'm assuming Ed Foundation's right underneath them. But then we also have parent committee leaders. What are we thinking of there? Like our LCAP parents and our CAC
Right,
parents?
or is that,
and our-
right, or is that like the boosters, the athletic and academic boosters and those?
Or maybe it's a widely cast net and it includes all of them, site council, you know,
Right.
anything. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and in fact, I would ask that maybe we name the CAC so that we do have that SELPA component.
So
that
we make
SELPA
sure that we invite them.
Yeah. When on 14, when you have the DLAC, the ELAC, the FOAC, and the PTOC, maybe that's the place where I don't know. But anyway, the CAC is our community advisory committee for our SELPA.
Yes.
And that's a large component of parents. They represent a large component of parents in our district.
That's
That
good.
could be a separate group.
Yes.
I think the CAC, they have special, I mean, they have a viewpoint.
The only thing is there aren't very many of them. There's
Okay.
maybe 5 or 6 parents and then that many staff. So, I mean,
Okay.
it could be a separate group, but I'd hate for you guys to do a, 45-minute live session and
Yeah.
have you folks there. Cause I think that happened in one of the times. Where
Right.
we carve it up so small. I mean, you want it to be small so people feel comfortable talking, but you get it so tiny, they're kind of in the hot seat.
Yes.
And
Yeah, okay.
sometimes when we have blended groups, they learn from one another a broader perspective of the district too. So sometimes it serves a good purpose in that fashion.
I really like that point, especially when you're talking about groups that are very specific like that. I think it's kind of like when we bring affinity groups together, you get
Mhm.
crossways,
Yeah.
understanding.
Well, okay, that's good. And what was the decision on the parent committee leaders? Is that a separate category? Or is that being folded into 14?
So in the committees that I sit on, there's not really a parent leader. I'm like social emotional well-being and some of the other ones that we all sit on. So we could, LCAP has the invitation list is huge and it includes students. So I don't know if we want to put the committee, the people who serve on committees in a separate group, because it's pretty big when you put all the committees together.
Mm.
So maybe have one that's parent leaders, which is kind of like site parent leaders of various stripes, and then have more like district parents that would include all the parents
serve
involved
on
on steering
committees.
committees and
Yeah.
LCAP and those bigger
Because there's
things.
4 or 5 and there's big invitation lists to all of them. Not that everybody comes all the time.
Right, but that way they're all invited.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that okay, Cindy, do you think?
Yeah, and I like that school sites, those that are leaders on the school site, and then those that kind of look more globally, kind of being separate.
Yeah, so on the parent lead, that one, you know, net could be broad to site council, I mean, basically, not the ed fund. Well, no, it would be the ed fund folks, because these are just the big ed funds. So it would be, you know, any kind of site leader. PTA maybe could focus with PTA though.
Mhm.
So you don't want then the expectation to be you go to both, right?
Right.
You don't want to double up on dominating voices or something.
Right. I almost feel like PTA should be separate. Ed fund
Ed fund
foundation should be
affiliates?
separate. And then all other school site council and
Booster groups.
booster groups and yeah.
This is starting to get more like
I
it
know.
was the very first year we did this, first time when Rob Kessler was retiring. And we had pretty good turnout because the community had never done this before, you know, in a long, long time, not never, but most people's memory, never. And then the second time, when Steve Enoch was retiring, we kind of set it up the same way. And I remember it was kind of hard on Leadership Associates because there was very low turnout. Plus, there was more opportunity to participate from the comfort of your home rather than, you know, because as technology grew. So I don't know.
Do you guys, Dennis and team, do you guys have an opinion about that?
Well, I think if we maybe have if there's a little larger group, and then if it starts to get too large, I mean, we can work with Cindy and just break it off and then form a second group if necessary. So I think we have, particularly the 3 consultants, we have the ability to do that.
So one of the things we learned during the pandemic is that we did a sign up genius and we limited to 15 to 20 per slot, because that's what Leadership Associates was comfortable with. And that way, if we knew there was only 2 people, we could personally call them, email them, reach out and bring them into another group. Or if that we had a waiting list, and if we were over the amount, we could create a second list.
Oh, that sounds great.
So maybe if Leadership Associates is seeing that in the searches they're doing currently,
Right.
the sign up genius option.
I think is a great way to do that. Yes.
Okay, that helps us manage.
But let's also kind of keep these categories that we talked
Right.
about so that
Mhm.
they're kind of more like interest. And
Right.
then if it's low interest, we combine them with somebody else.
And the other one that has a lot of people in it is the grade reform. It has a lot of students and a lot of parents in it. So those, the LCAP and the grade reform are both big groups of people.
Yeah, and I would say strategic arts now too. That's a new committee that, yeah.
So maybe it's each of the strategic direction steering committees, it's LCAP, it's grade reform, and it's the new arts one. So that's 6 different committees.
Right. I mean, I don't think everybody's gonna,
No.
so if we put those together,
Yeah.
even though it looks like a lot, I don't know whether we're gonna include the students that are on those committees in this, or we're gonna keep them separate in another area. Or have the student senate and the affinity leaders and whoever else from the student body that we want to have. We have to just decide, because there's a lot of students in both of those.
It does kind of seem like it's honoring the students' role as members of those interest things, not saying, oh, you're students. So
I
I
agree.
kind of like where you were headed with, let's include them, because they
Right.
are part of that
So
content.
we can get those invitation lists from John and Chris and Jessica, you know, from social emotional well-being, and then just make that a group.
Yeah, and then if the signups are huge, we carve it up.
Right.
Yeah, and I do think that this is, even though we may not have done it like this the last time, I think that given our strategic directions in these last 4 years, that shared leadership and really being able to provide opportunity for voices to be raised, and then
Totally agree, because it's really leaning into the different ways they already are involved.
And if we're doing those, if we're doing social emotional, should we also do equity and deep
Yeah.
learning?
Yeah, that's what I mean by all the steering. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and if we need another day, either in person or Zoom, I have freed up the 26th as well. So oftentimes doing the students in person is a good idea. You know, usually I'll go to one of the campuses or several of the campuses. So if we need to do an extra day, I think that's fine.
I think we have some a real good direction from the board, and Cindy's really adept at this, and we'll work at that. We'll keep the identity of these various groups. If it's sparse, we can combine. If it gets too heavy, we'll break open and open up another group. And then the thing that we have found out and we've mentioned is the online survey. People really appreciate that. And so we'll want to work with Cindy and John and the schools to get the word out to both parents, but then also to staff, that the option to do the online survey is there. And you as a board will see the direct results. I mean, we don't group it. We provide an executive summary, but you'll see how the various groups responded in terms of their preferences and what they're looking for. And you also see our comments on each of these groups, what they were looking for in a superintendent, and the strengths of the district and the challenges of the district. So I think you'll get a really good 360 view of how people are viewing the district and what they see is important in their next leader, superintendent.
great, thank you.
Okay. I think, Cindy, if you could just put up the agenda again, just so we reacquaint where we're at. We're still on number 5, but we're bullet 2 under number 5. And so we've done the last 3 or 4 searches, and we have the position descriptions from 2016 and 2020, and we'll be working with the staff just to see if there's any tweaking of how you want to describe the community and how you want to describe the district, because that's in the position description that goes out to all the candidates. And so we will have drafts of that we've used and that's been approved by the board the last 2 times. So that gets inserted, and then we will create a position description, meaning the profile, the personal and professional characteristics that the board views is important. After all the input's done, we'll submit that to the entire board, and you'll respond back in terms of any changes, individually respond back. And so by the end of the week of the 25th, we should have a position description in place that's a result of all of this is input, the online survey, and then you would have had a chance to review it also. Any questions on that part of it?
I assume that we can each individually respond on this without it doesn't have to be an open session.
That's right.
Right, okay.
We would send it out blind copy, and then your responses would only go back to us.
Okay, great, thanks.
So something I wonder if we should discuss when 5 of us can discuss it is, should this description include, at least in some level of detail, our work in the strategic directions? Because that is a different thing since 4 years ago. I think it's something that we're still committed to, but that's why I'm kind of putting it out there rather than it going just as individual feedback, because I'm just assuming, and I may be assuming incorrectly, that seems like an important piece to add, that we want to continue on that path. And I've just been, in site visits and stuff, people have been asking, are we going to change direction again? Right. And that creates angst and all that. So I'm just kind of wondering if we need to put that out there, right? In the
Yeah.
description.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would agree. Maybe we can have a conversation about that without getting into the details of what our strategic directions are, because I think that's a whole nother.
But like a commitment to continuing with it, you know, just kind of
Right.
laying it out there.
Right,
And then anybody can go look at the website and read them.
right.
And perhaps a statement of that nature could be included in that your board is seeking
Yes.
leadership that will continue, and then give us the description for that. And that can be the lead-in statement to a position description.
Does that sound, I mean, that was kind of what I was thinking. And I think that would be kind of reassuring.
I
to a
think
lot of
it's
folks on the
important
team.
that we include that in some fashion, and I guess we'll have to wordsmith it to figure out, maybe not to go too far into the, into the weeds, but
Right.
I think it's really important because I mean, for me, I'm wanting somebody who's gonna take us to the next level, not change course. So, and I've been getting the same feedback from some of the staff about they're concerned about, well, now a new superintendent, it's gonna be, everything will be different.
Right.
So we
And-
need to include that.
And as we look at, this is a really good conversation because on number 12, this is where that we're going to have a conversation, and you're going to have a conversation amongst yourself. We'll facilitate it. That really will draw on just exactly this point. What are you looking for? And what direction? And so I think the opportunity for the board to have that conversation should take place just at the end of this meeting. It'll be the bulk of what we talk about today in number 12.
Thank you.
Okay, good. And so I'm just going to keep moving on. Then the last item there, and then Sally's going to take over the next portion of this, is the online survey dates. We have that's on the timeline. And the question that we have is, what languages would you like that in? What are the predominant languages? We have survey in several different languages. So English, Spanish. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Major languages.
Yeah.
I don't know at all.
Yes.
Certainly Mandarin would be up there.
Yeah, Mandarin. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So our communications director will provide the list of languages that represent our community.
Okay.
And so we have the we have the survey in 4 or 5 different languages. Oftentimes, if there's a different language, we would want to use one of your district staff interpreters to help adjust that survey slightly. So we'll work with you on that. We have it in probably the predominant languages, but if it's something that we don't have, then we may have to work with the staff in terms of interpreters that you have.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I would just direct you to connect with Cindy and then the communication staff, and maybe we can have the majority languages and then kind of go from there as requested or something of that nature.
Very good. Okay. So we've covered that, and Sally's going to take over the next section.
Okay, thank you. The timeline, we did get an opportunity to speak to that a bit last time. I think you had it up on the screen a moment ago. I think it's the next slide. Starting with Dennis mentioned the online survey, we will have that posted the 13th through the 22nd. In the languages that are determined to be appropriate for your district. And then we talked about the staff and community input dates on the 20th, the 25th, and if necessary, the 26th can be added. Those are not dates that necessarily are for the board to be part of. The blue part of the calendar are the important meetings for the board to be check their calendars on. We are looking at advertising in the Association of California School Administrators, EdCal, and that would be on March 18th and 25th, so that we could have a deadline for close of applications on April 3rd. And at that point, we would want to have the position description completed, and we post that on our website, and the district will also post that on their website, your website. Then we will enter into the comprehensive reference review. And the next two meeting dates are the important dates that we talk with you about. And I think we did have an initial conversation about this last week. The April 18th would be when we would review all of the applications that have come in. We would also look at suggested interview questions and suggested schedule for the interviews. In advance of that meeting, about 3 days prior to that, the board would receive view-only access to all of that information so that you can come prepared to that meeting with the information that we will be sharing with you on that. We present the candidates in what we call tiers. The first tier, where we think in what we have done in our background check and in the application and discussion with candidates, well, who we think most closely match what it is you're seeking in your next leader. Then there would be tier 2 candidates who maybe be missing one little piece or just not quite as strong as the tier 1 candidates, but certainly may be still under consideration. And then tier 3 candidates who in our opinion have not really met the minimum requirements for the position. So you have that information only as a guideline so that you can maybe judge how long you want to spend on individuals as you move through review of that material. The questions are based again on the information that we primarily receive from that input sessions, what it is that matters the most to your district. We want to make sure that you're having the opportunity to talk to candidates about those items. And then for the board interviews, this is a Saturday and Sunday, and I think we spoke if these were the available dates, we could have those at the district office because it would not be at a time where district staff would be in. And that at least the 27th would be full day. And then if we needed to have a follow-up on the following day, that usually runs about a half day or slightly more, depending on how many finalists you might have or how intense the deliberations might be over candidates. And was there a question? Okay, and then in early May, or as immediately following, should the board determine to do some kind of a validation process, whether it's a site visitation, bringing the candidate in, or whatever is determined by the board, that would happen in early May with the target of May 14th, your May 14th agenda to be able to put the contract and appointment of the superintendent. Until you do that formal appointment on the 14th, you have a finalist, you do not have a superintendent. It would be for a July 1 start date, or if there's any transition time, you'd be able to talk about it at that point. Questions on the timeline and those dates? Are those dates that are working for people that we had discussed?
I have
before?
one clarifying question. So when you're meeting with the different parent, student, staff groups, do you, many of us are or all of us have liaisons to those boards? Would you want us to not be in those meetings? I just want to kind of clarify. Yeah, I agree, but I wanted that to be named.
Shouldn't.
Yeah,
Should not, yeah.
Yeah, typically, we
I agree. I just wanted to kind of clarify that.
we typically do not encourage board members to be there because people just feel a little more comfortable to just
Agreed.
And how much does the survey dictate what our advertising looks like as far as the position, our posting of the position? Do the surveys and the feedback that we're getting from these groups kind of dictate what we say that we're looking for in the description? Because I'll let you answer that one first.
Dennis, I saw you shake.
Or is it going to be a more templated advertisement?
No, I think we won't develop the position description. We developed well, first off, we're going to have a good conversation with you today. And so that'll give us a real good sense of what you're looking for. And then we take the individual, all those sessions and along with the online survey, and then we get a sense of, okay, these are the general thoughts in terms of what the community and the board are looking for in the superintendent. So we begin to develop the position description as early as today after the meeting with the board, but then all these other elements get blended in. And that's why the position description won't come to you in a draft form until after our Zoom sessions and after the online survey.
In addition, with the online survey, we can monitor the results as they're coming in. We don't have to wait until it's closed to look at the results. We start watching that right away and seeing if there are themes that start evolving from that as well.
And I
Yeah.
think you
I was just-
also will see the position description. So, you know, you can give us input on if you feel that there's something there that doesn't really represent what is in the best interest of the district.
No, it just, so to me, when I'm looking at this timeline, I like that it's aggressive, but it places, it feels a little tight. And I wonder if that makes people feel less, like a little bit more disenfranchised if their survey date is actually after job postings and then questioning whether their input is actually, how valid it is to the job description. For example, online survey dates, 13th through the 22nd. Then consultants confer with staff and community designated board.
It's really
On
the big
community
deal
engagement
that
is like the
18th is before the,
Yeah.
is that what you're getting at? Is that the posting is
Yeah,
before that?
yeah, exactly. I'm just kind of,
I
I
see.
I want to be aware of the optics of what that would say, unless these postings on the 18th and 25th are more generic postings, and we're still waiting to get the community input back before we finalize the deadline for applications. It's a little, the April 3rd. I've never done one of these searches before too, but that feels like a really tight window. And maybe this is such a unique position that the candidates you're going to get are the candidates that you're going to get.
I think it's a really, really good point. When we advertise on the 18th and the 25th, we do not post the position description. It's an advertisement of a position that's open in San Ramon, et cetera. And it's not until after, so that'll be on the 18th and 25th, and that's very, very traditional. And so the candidates will be looking at San Ramon, looking at the website, and then right after the 25th, hopefully or a few days after that, we'll have a draft position description, but that goes to the candidates at that point in time. So this isn't atypical, but it is a little bit aggressive, but we felt we needed to close by April 3rd in order to meet that May 14th timeframe of a deadline.
And one other item that is not on this, but I think we mentioned last time, we do have a subscription, and we have about 1,100 people who are signed up for that subscription, and people start looking at the district, assessing their own skill set, their own interest level, and then we start getting calls. And we also have twice monthly conference calls with all the partners in the firm, and we talk about San Ramon Valley and some of the initial information that we're getting about what you're looking for. And people kind of know the profile of the district, and they start making suggestions of people who we may want to recruit and start talking with as well. So there are a number of different avenues we're approaching this with kind of simultaneously. It is an aggressive timeline, though.
I'm less concerned about the timeline than I am about the right candidate. And I don't want it to be so narrow and so tight that we eliminate potential candidates, but I also want to be cognizant of the fact that the position's open.
Well, the timeline is really important if we're going to get good candidates before they apply for other jobs. So that I think you have to put forward. But I think what Leadership Associates has clarified is that those advertising things are just, hey, San Ramon Valley's looking for a superintendent, pay attention.
Yeah.
And then when the description is ready and the application is ready, people, it's kind of like you need to see it more than once to, right? So I'm really glad you asked this question, because it's addressing what influences what. And so it was a good thing to unpack, but I really think we need to stay with this timeline, because the original version of this had us voting on all of this after school ended and left like a 2-week overlap between John and the predecessor. So I mean, the timeline is critical.
I agree, because the movement in these positions, in the administration positions, is this time of the year, it's a short window that everybody moves. So I think we definitely have to, I think they've done a good job of putting everything chronologically where it needs to be. But I agree, we want to make sure that our community input is given the space and time it needs to, for us to be able to see it and for the community to feel like they're heard.
Yeah,
And really, their input is influencing us, right?
yeah,
Yes.
Less the superintendents who might be applying.
correct.
Good
Yeah,
point.
I just wanted to make sure that I understood
No, I think
where
it's
that
great that you
was.
brought it up.
And so that way it wasn't, well, we really desire your feedback, except for we're not going to get your feedback until we already have all the postings. So I think that that explains it, and people should feel whole about that explanation. So
And to your point, this is the normal process. There's an advertisement and then the description comes out later. That's a traditional way of recruiting for this level of of administration.
And we're talking to each of the candidates along the way, and I mean, our conversation helps to describe what the board's looking for, the community's looking for. And so a lot of that takes place with people. The minute right after this meeting, it's going to go on our website, and we'll start to get calls immediately. And so this is an ongoing process of conversation with candidates along the process all the way through the closing period.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Sally?
Back to the calendar are the dates that are important for the board to have. Are those available dates? And do we need formal action on the calendar, or can we just by agreement that this would be our final calendar? Is the April 18th and April 27, 28, are those dates that work for the board?
Yeah, and so do we want to decide on a time specifically for the 18th?
The 18th will probably be 2 to 2.5 hour meeting. It depends on how many applicants. Sometimes it can go as long as 3 hours.
But if you want to decide on a
So it's
time, that's very helpful.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
board can-
Does it matter from your perspective if it's morning or afternoon or early evening, or
No, no.
we have,
I blocked the day.
yeah.
Maybe we could all just share what our constraints are, and then Cindy can help us.
That's right.
Yeah.
Just wanted to think about that.
Well, that won't be happening at the district office, though. That'll be at school sites. Okay, okay. And we don't have that agenda yet for that day? Okay, okay, okay.
And since that's very much, at least from past experience, kind of a working meeting, we're all going through all the stuff, sharing our notes. I don't think this arrangement is ideal. I think being at a table in a conference room would be better.
Dennis, the meeting on the 18th, is that closed session?
It
Yes.
is.
Yes, it is closed.
Entirely closed session.
The
That's
18th
when all the candidates' resumes are right in front of us, so highly confidential.
Yeah.
So that would be
You'll
in
have-
John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll have a week before that, just, I think we may have mentioned it, you'll have access to the electronic portal, so you'll have all of that. And then we can talk to Cindy too about we can have hard copies also available, but it's a 2 or 3 hour working closed session.
So I can be available anytime that day as long as I know ahead of time, so I can block out my calendar.
I can too.
I can move it.
Oh.
I can move the appointment. Around like 2:33.
We could work around your appointment,
Okay.
unless, I mean, between you and Jesse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm pretty available that day. So about like at 9 to 12.
Yeah. Early.
That way we're actually like.
That sounds great to me.
golden hours.
So we're looking at 9 to 12
Okay. The selection. Very
For
good.
the
for the 18th, yes.
Okay.
And do we need to take action on this or just agree?
You don't need
Up
to.
you.
Yeah.
If you're comfortable, we can move on. Everybody shakes their head.
Everyone
Yes, we're
comfortable?
good.
Yes, okay, great.
All right.
And then the 27th, 28th are important dates because any applicants, we let them know ahead of time. We post on our website the interview date so that they can also plan in the event that they are invited for interview.
Yeah, and
So-
I had that whole weekend on hold for me, so I don't know any.
So do I.
Okay, then looks like we've gone through the timeline. Any questions on the timeline? Those important dates have been determined. So then in terms of moving to number 7, for candidate recruitment, we talked about the subscription we have and also our network of conference calls where we talk with one another and go through the profile of San Ramon and people suggest people who we should contact on. And then our publication in the Association of California School Administrators, EdCal. So that pretty much is our recruitment. Jackie, Dennis, anything to add on that?
No,
Can I
No.
ask a question? So you're looking at California. Are we doing any advertising on a national level, or is that in terms of recruitment? Did I miss that or?
Our subscription service covers many, many people from out of state as well. If there are other avenues out of state that you'd be interested in, imagine that we can include that as well. We could look into that. Is there, Dennis, Jackie, anything we should?
you know, we can work with and maybe talk to John particularly because he's so knowledgeable of it. And, on occasions, we've gone into the AA essay advertisement. If they have an online version, they've changed a little bit, and that's a direct pipeline, you know, nationally. We get enormous numbers of people from out of state who apply. Sometimes when we go to the national journals, we get individuals. We get a lot of individuals, but they're not the ones that are really focused on California in particular. It just sounds sort of intriguing. But we can definitely work on something in terms of a national publication. Although, as we said, AXA and our website, people nationally tend to access those two sites.
Okay, and how the last recruitment, how was that just within the state and then it just
I
extended
don't remember.
nationally?
Let's see what these guys remember. I think we might have gone broader. It's really challenging on a superintendent who has, I mean, you could be from somewhere else, but I think you kind of need some familiarity with the weirdness of California and especially the reality of the funding situation in California.
And I think last time, right, because it was during COVID, part of
Yes.
the and stuff, it was probably a little different than what they've been doing usually.
I
Last-
think California is unique in a lot of ways from a lot of different parts of the country. So I don't know how wide a net, because we don't want to be inundated with people who are not on the same page.
Yeah, it's not like being closed to California. It's just like, how aggressively do you look outside of California?
Yeah.
The people who are really interested in California, just they'll go on they already are on our website, and then AXA publication, which is both online and the paper publication. All these individuals nationally are focused on that if they're really interested in California. Sometimes you just go nationally. It's like, oh, well, that sounds interesting. Let me throw an application in, but they really haven't given it much thought. So we brought John in, as you can see, and we've done a lot of people from outside the state, but they've somehow been focused on California, so they've gone to our website or AXA, which is really, it's a state publication, but people nationally subscribe to it.
Okay, that's
Does that
fair.
sound good?
Yep,
to you,
yep.
Laura?
Thank you.
Okay, good. On number 8, the law now requires that we list a salary range. At some point in time, we tend to put that on the position description once that is approved. So we will be needing a salary range from you. And it can be a broad range. And then also, that somewhat relates to number 10. We would like a copy of your current superintendent's contract. Often people are requesting that information, and rather than all of them having to contact the district, if we have it, we can share that. So we would like a copy of that. And that may be the basis of where you're looking for your salary range numbers. The number 9 in between that is a worksheet that we provide anyone who is being invited for interview so that they can suggest or list what it is their expectation is. And it covers a variety of categories. It has the salary, benefits, length, term, any physical required physical, just a number of items that are listed on that. I think you have a copy of that. You do not complete that, just the finalists that are invited into interview would have a copy of that so that we have that to share in deliberations with whomever you select as your finalist. But just so that you know going into that we do have that information available. So any questions on 8, 9, or 10? The salary range, the worksheet, or the current superintendent's contract?
In terms of the salary range, you'll provide us with various comps and things, so we're not just looking at what we have now, we're looking at what.
Right.
We can do that, yes.
Maybe we work, I think there's going to be a board. I thought I heard maybe a board subcommittee, or we can certainly work with the board president on this one in particular to provide a range, and we'll keep it broad enough to where there's flexibility there. How would the board like us to approach that?
So we recently renegotiated the contract with our superintendent. So Trustee Van Zee and I were on that committee. So if it's okay with everybody else.
Well, so that's fine, but we did take action on an ad hoc with Shelley and I at
True.
yeah. So I mean, I don't know if
Okay.
we want to create a.
And that was
second one.
multi-stepped. You guys did
Yeah.
research, then you and I negotiated, and then I think it probably makes
Yeah.
sense
So-
for Laura because she'll be kind of key in the
I
negotiating.
just want an opportunity to sit down and
Yeah.
look at that again.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good.
Yeah, so maybe if everyone agrees, the ad hoc committee that we've already previously created with trustee Clark and myself to do that, and then obviously we
Yeah.
wouldn't be the deciders, we would be the.
And Shelley, you've been the common link in all of that, so I think that's
Yeah, okay. That sounds good.
Okay,
Okay,
good.
very good.
And Cindy's gonna give them a copy of the current contract. Okay.
And I think it's important, just it's not necessarily what the current superintendent is making, because those are all individual decisions. So we want to range enough that goes, to the certainly below that and up to, or maybe just slightly above. But we want to keep it to where, and we'll work with you on that, to where they're pretty clear comps in terms of what's the range that seems to make sense. And then it's going to be based upon really that individual's experience when they come before the board, and then you make a decision in terms of actual salary.
That sounds great.
And that's where it's really helpful that that renegotiation has already happened, the separation of the Me Too. And, maybe less rigidity with those steps and stuff so that we can actually do what Dennis was just saying about look at the candidate
Yep.
rather than being in a kind of a bureaucratic fixed thing of, oh, you have this many years of experience, you fall here,
Yeah,
Yes. Yes, and you don't need, and even the steps, I mean, we see those in some contracts, and we don't see them in other contracts. And so you want to have as much flexibility as possible to make a determination when you see the candidate and his or her experiences.
great, thank you.
Okay.
Good.
Sally, did you complete all
I-
those?
I believe so. And I just wanted to inform the board that I had a pre-scheduled meeting on this date that I was able to postpone a bit, but I will be leaving at 9:15. So when I cut out, it's not because I lost internet.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank
We're-
you.
Yeah, so Sally's, I think number 11, Sally, you were gonna just cover that, but I just, any questions?
Yes, I thought we were there. Yes. Any questions or? On where we
We've
are?
been asking them along the way.
I thought so. Okay.
Not a basketball. All right, so
Jackie,
So we're going to go ahead and Cindy, I think at this point in time, we can turn the screen, we don't need, I don't think, to project anything more at this time, other than let's just look at the number 12. And that's what we're going to do. So Jackie, why don't you give an introduction? Because this is it's not the meat of the conversation, but it really is the heavy part that we really talk to the board about what you're looking for. So Jackie, why don't you introduce this section, then we'll pull this off from the screen and we'll have interaction with the board.
Absolutely. And as Dennis said, this is really important as you have the opportunity to really let us know, what are you looking for in that next superintendent? So that's going to be the first question. We want to know what personal, professional qualities, characteristics, experience do you feel that next superintendent's going to need in order to be successful? We're also then going to go to, what do you see as the district's strengths? What are the kinds of things that you want to see moved forward? You mentioned things like, continuing the direction with the strategic plan that you've done. And what do you see as the challenges that are going to be facing the district in the near and the next several years? And then also we'll do, are there any questions about the process or procedures? So that being said, let's start with, what do you want to see in that next superintendent? Any attributes, characteristics, experience? What do you want to see?
He needs
This is
to
a
be
free
a good communicator.
Okay.
Or
Oh.
she.
Or she. You're right. That would be great too. And be courageous.
Yes.
Well, and I think, absolutely, I agree with what Shelley said. And along with the communicator, I think they need to be confident and have a presence, be able to be quick on their feet with communication, not just stuff that,
Absolutely.
carefully prepared. And maybe I have a slightly different angle on the courageous is I just mean like, committed, right? Not committed, like time committed, but like committed to purpose, committed to vision, assured about it.
Yeah, like a resolve about this is what we're doing. But I think somebody who can also take the diverse viewpoints from our community and get people to the table to talk about things versus it kind of being a bifurcated
I love that.
existence. And so how do we find that leader that can, with
Can
clarity
find the
of
common ground,
vision,
right?
can find common ground, provide transparency, in every place that we possibly can, but then also understand that we have a very diverse community and we're trying to achieve solid academic instruction in our schools, develop great students and all those, everything else that's in our strategic direction. So.
And the student focus piece. I mean, that's something John has been so, like it's front of mind. It's not just like, oh yeah, what about the students? And it really kind of drives things, and then it keeps the focus on the students.
Yeah, yes, being able to center the students. And I think someone who has the empathy and the state of mind to be able to see and intake all perspectives and unify with all of those perspectives in mind. I think that, to Jesse's point, we do have a extremely diverse population, whether in thought or in ethnicity or in heritage. And so I think it's important to have a strong leader that can bring us all together. So
Also somebody who leads with an equity lens, because that is something that's really been important in our strategic directions and to, I think, our community. And I want to make sure that we continue with that so that all students have access and that we provide those opportunities.
When also continuing, right, with shared leadership, because we want to make sure that someone who's just not like, here, this is what I want, and right. Because John's been really good about working with allowing, right, that even the principals and different administrators and and different areas.
The other thing too is a lot of superintendents aren't as visible to their to the school sites, and John has been exceptional about not only including us in site visits, but making site visits on his own. And we also have instituted a lot of programs around recognizing staff that are outstanding and really having a strong connection with all the school sites. And, you know, that's not easy because we have 35 and, you know, there's a lot of other work to do, but that's a really important piece. And when I go out to school sites, I notice that the staff that are there really appreciate that he comes and that he shows an interest in what's going on at each one of the schools, as well as all of us going. They appreciate that too, because they feel like they're seen and they're appreciated. So that's another important part of the community building.
Yeah, and I would say to that point, to someone who sees the district as a whole of all of the parts of the school sites and the community, down to the students, the parents, the staff. And so having that viewpoint of what a unified school district is, rather than just an office on high that dictates. I know that's extreme,
But
but
that's a great way to say it with the way you started that with the sees every,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the parts.
yeah. And then also just kind of another thought is, you know, in these last few years, we've been able to really embrace what's next. And I think someone who has that vision of understanding that I just realized this the other night, we're already a quarter of the way through the 21st century. And so are we will be in a few months. And so kind of, you know, looking at, you know, our district, our staff, our students have really been embracing AI and other technologies and what our students need, you know, redefining success, what they really need when they leave our district, and how the world's going to be different for a kindergarten today as they leave our district. And so someone who kind of has that mindset of looking at what's next in deep learning and in academics, not necessarily looking at the traditional, this is how I learned, so this is how we all learn.
Yeah, I feel like we've been on the leading edge of at least talking about what college and career readiness looks like, and not just kind of a templated college and career readiness of like what everybody else is doing, but really like digging in aggressively and deep to what is next. And I would love to find somebody who can continue on in that vision as well, because I really think that that's going to be like a
Yeah.
biggest strong suit to SRVUSD.
Yeah. And what is next for our community
Yeah.
in the 20, because we do have a wonderfully intelligent and very, just an amazing community, and that may be different than a community in Wisconsin or New Jersey, or, you know what I mean? So.
To elaborate on what Susanna was talking about collaborative and shared leadership, the thing that I think has been really different over the last 4 years is that it's really intentional collaboration, and then the input from groups gets woven in, and then there's a back and forth. It's not just collaboration. Yep, we did it. And now we're gonna, and I think that adds credibility, but it also is valuing the other input, not just doing it to be inclusive, but doing it because you're gonna get a better product.
I was going to say, it makes the end result better.
And then when things are different than what the group was for, there's an explanation of why. And then it's like it's all moving forward, rather than people feeling like their idea got vetoed. It was like, oh, I see how it got used, but then added on to.
So along the lines of communication, there is a faction of our community that proves to be difficult sometimes to deal with. And I think whoever the superintendent is, as far as qualities, I hate to say it this way, but needs to have a thick skin, because there are times when it gets very trying and difficult, and it needs to be somebody who's able to kind of have that barrier between them, you know, taking things personally, basically. And I know these are professionals, and it's not going to be their first school district, but we are unique in that way, that we do have some very difficult things that we have to deal with, and whoever is in that position needs to be able to differentiate between taking things personally and being able to know how to deal and diffuse situations that potentially can become more of an issue. That would be the best way that I could express it.
Good, thank you. Any other characteristics, qualities that you think the new superintendent will need?
Basically, we hit all the ones on the list and didn't really prioritize them for you.
Just get all of that, please.
Would you want to ensure that we have put in, continues with the strategic directions?
Yeah, I wanted to add to that point specifically. I think that it's that we are looking for someone who, you know, I was with some staff the other day and they were talking about this analogy of and you know, this is our every couple of years new superintendent, and so staff and families who have been here for a while are kind of seeing that pattern. And this analogy of a new superintendent comes with this great new baby and sets it in the middle of the room, and then when they leave the baby, and then a new superintendent comes in with a new baby. And so now, you know, we all have all these babies. So and I have a lot of babies, so I know what that's like. But so looking for someone who
It's almost like shares the same commitment, right?
shares the same.
They got to buy into it to be able to be a leader of it.
Right. And is willing to be able to build on someone else's on not just one person, but on the community's vision and direction, as opposed to someone who's, you know, maybe more inclined to, you know, lead with their idea first and then support the other ideas. But you know that.
Yeah, would you say it would be fair that we would feel like from a 30,000-foot view, these are our strategic directions, but we are open to maybe granular ways that you want to implement them that might be different than what we're already doing, but overall, this is the large direction.
Yeah, we don't really want to
Absolutely.
change the directions.
Yeah.
So
No.
someone who is equally committed to the directions, and I think that's an important, it's semantics, but we're really clear that it's not a strategic plan. It's our strategic directions, and let's
Right.
use those words.
Right. And then, you know, obviously that new leader would have autonomy, and they'd lead us through, and they'd take us to the next level, but not take us to a different place.
Yeah, because
Like
the
that's-
directions aren't stagnant. It's just,
Right.
those are the directions, and we'd be continuing with them rather than changing course.
And I
Yeah,
think that that's a big concern of our staff, because a group of teachers met with me in office hours last week, 5 or 6 actually in a group, and what they wanted to talk about was the selection of the new superintendent, with the concern of exactly what you brought up. Are we going to go through this whole thing again, and then we're going to have everything different? And, you know, that was their big concern. So I think, you know, we can be flexible, because of course we want to continue to develop our strategic directions. And if this person has great suggestions and is willing to do that, that's great. But I think that kind of keeping that consistency, especially at this point, because of the pattern that we have of every 4 years we're in this place, is going to be important for the staff.
Yeah, I had met with actually a parent who stated about the same thing, where that they're happy with what's going on, the direction and all that stuff, and they're kind of concerned, oh, new superintendent, does that mean things change? And so, yeah, I think I agree that we do want to, you know, someone who is not afraid to change things up if it is right, like to make certain changes, but not to like just throw out everything.
Well, because you look at how much has been oriented around those, like the data system, and then it took a year to put that into place, and it's finally getting going. So it's not that we're not open to things evolving, but we don't want to create the structure again, because we don't want to interrupt the progress that we're having.
If I can mention something, I think it really goes back to, I think, Mr. Van Zeen, the conversation about the postings and so forth. And we're taking notes along the way. And, you know, one of the things I wrote down, we'll continue with and is committed to the current San Ramon Valley strategic direction. But what we can do, well, I don't think we've done this before, but on our posting, we can work with Cindy to create a link. So when they see our posting, they can link right on to the San Ramon strategic direction. I think that would be extraordinarily helpful for any candidate to view what's currently in place and then for us to be able to communicate too. The board's really committed to this. They know there's always fine tuning and there's tweaking, but this becomes the basis of the belief system. It is the basis of the belief system in the school district. How would the board feel about that if we kind of put that out in front?
I like that a lot, and I think it's really important. So it's not just, oh, I happened to look at your website and saw this. It's like, it's very clear. There's going to be questions about this, and then lots of other things too, but that you're like priming the pump for the conversation.
Yeah, and it's intentional about what we're looking for too. I think that's
And it's more fair for them because they're coming prepared for it rather than
Right.
if they happen to.
right.
post it.
And it clearly shows that this is not a pet project of the previous superintendent. This is our values.
It's almost
our
like
vision.
our philosophy, our
Good.
mission and vision.
Well, Cindy, maybe you'd be kind to send us a link at some point in time, and then we'll kind of work that into our communications and actually in our posting, so people will have access. I think this is a great idea, in particular because you're so committed to it. You're really looking for a superintendent who believes in this and has a passion for it, and will build on it.
Okay, is there anything else you want to add before we go down to the strengths and then the challenges? Well, let's start with the strengths, and this is always helpful for us as we talk to candidates and, want them to know, what are you most proud of? What do you want them to build upon? And I think obviously you have some great pride in the work that's been done with your strategic directions. So tell us a little bit about that. What are some of the strengths?
I'm gonna start with passion. I think that, our community is very passionate about the kids in our community, and sometimes it makes for intense conversation, but more times than not, it makes for kids who are loved and cared for, and that's a big value in a community. And I know I'm grateful to live in a community like ours. So
For
Great, thank you.
me, number one is academic excellence. We have been able to achieve high levels of academic excellence with our students, even with the fact that our funding is not where it needs to be. And the other thing is we are educating the whole child. We take more of a holistic approach to our students, not that it's just academics, but that we make sure that they're cared for and that we pay attention to mental health and to balance in their lives and things like that. So also creating global citizens so that, we incorporate the service aspects of in our community with our students. So we're looking at the whole child, not just academically or what college you can get into or whatever. And also our CTE track, we have expanded that. And personally for me, that's been a really important thing. But I think that also speaks to the fact that we're looking at all of our students to make sure they all have opportunities. So the ones that maybe don't fit into the college groove will have other opportunities that we can provide before they leave us to give them a direction in where they want to go. So I think those are all strong points of ours.
Yeah, and I think that to support our academic achievement and performance, we have actually a very qualified staff, both certificated and classified, and everyone in between. So yeah, that's a strength of ours.
Any other strengths?
Go next.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of them have been hit on. I mean, I like what you said about passionate. Like, I think that is what makes, it more contentious sometimes, but it is a strength and sometimes a weakness.
Yeah.
But I think that overall what you see is a very engaged and active parent community who, and that, in collaboration and sharing with the district produces great students as well too, and highly achieving students as well. And I think academic excellence with that kind of asterisk of we're, something that's more forward leaning than just rote memorization. And yeah, we get, we we're only training on tests and how to achieve these tests, but something of like, what's future looking, forward thinking, academic excellence look like? So.
I would just add on to that because I think it's an important way to frame it. I think the tagline Success Reimagined has created a space for what everybody's already said, reiterating that it's not college track, career track, it's and just so reimagine success. And the way John always says yes and or both and, I think is a really important feature of this. I think over the years, but particularly in the last 4, there's been a leaning in on the kids that aren't being as successful. I mean, we've always looked at that because we have to in a certain way with data, but it's not just the extreme end, it's all of them. So this whole idea of seeing how they are, right? And then intervening early rather than waiting till learning issues or behavior issues become a really big deal. But still within that Success Reimagined, so that we're not trying to fit every kid in the same hole. And so that I think, and I think our community really buys into that. Sometimes they have to be kind of reminded of it. But I think, when we really see kind of the holistic surveys, whichever one of you talked about the whole child, I think people really do believe this. They sometimes need to be reminded. If you're caring about the whole child, you're not only talking about Stanford and Harvard, right? And so,
Well, because success, even if what we see as successful, doesn't mean it's successful if the student is not happy and thriving
Right.
in other ways than just academics.
so that's where I think Success Reimagined really captures that, especially when we add asterisks about that doesn't mean lowering standards. It means finding success for everyone.
Yeah, and I would say deepening standards, right? That deep learning aspect of it. And then from that to the point of the whole child, one of the things that I think we do, or we try to do well, we work towards is centering each and every student. So, uplifting each and every student, giving them opportunity to collaborate, to be a part of shared leadership, to speak out and speak up, to learn the way that they need to learn, the way that they want to learn, to find success in what they want to do, not necessarily in the expectation of what every student should do. And so really being able to uplift the individual voices of each student.
And a lot of what we've talked about is really aspirational. So that's all balanced with the limited resources that we have. But it just feels like a strength as if we started improving the structures to support all of that. It's not perfect, but at least the conversation is there. There's space for all of this.
And in the last 4 years, we have elevated student voice in a way that I had never seen before in this district. So student voice is at the forefront of the majority of what we do. So they have input in all different ways, whether it's on committees or student senate or coming to board meetings, which we're getting a fair number of students doing that. So student voice has been elevated, and we want to definitely continue with that because that's a very, very important part for me as a board member in making decisions, to hear from them, because many times they're smarter than a lot of the adults.
Yeah, and I want to also kind of highlight our staff. I think that we have, I know I'm proud of the teachers that teach my kids, and I think that and the classified staff and the administration, and so that's definitely a highlight of this district, is that we attract great staff. We're a destination district in many ways, and we like to think that we keep them here. So I know retention is a thing, but many of the staff that I speak with talk about how they came here because they wanted to work here, not because they necessarily needed to, you know what I'm saying? And then they stay because they see that they can make a difference. So.
Great. Any other strengths before we go into what do you see as the challenges facing the district, the new superintendent?
Budget. Yeah.
Yeah.
Funding is the biggest challenge.
Well, in addition to the funding, it's then communicating clearly to all community groups about that funding. Whether it's the community when we're trying to convince them to support us, or staff when they understand the conditions around negotiating. I mean, that it's going to get worse, and we need somebody who's able to articulate and open to articulating it, you know, open to listening about it, but then, you know, really being able to communicate about the challenges. And then several of us have alluded to, you know, some controversy in the district. That's a challenge, but I don't, you know, when you look at it compared to some districts in other parts of the state, while we've had some interesting board meetings, it's not as untenable as it is in some places. And part of that is leaning in and letting people be heard, but then letting other people be heard. And I think some of the challenges are sort of working themselves out because it's all out there because we're not hiding from it. We're letting it be part of the public discussion.
Yeah, and I think, and I think I know we're on challenges, but to kind of bring in a strength that just to toot our own horn, I think that one of our strengths is that we do have a well-functioning board who is able to have hard conversations on the dais in front of, in public with others, bringing in others' perspectives and public comment and stuff. And I think that that is an asset. I'd like to think that is an asset to our district, that we are able to relay the perspectives of different community members, have the conversation on the dais in public around our educational community as a whole. So
Glad you brought that up.
Why? Back to challenges.
What's your biggest weakness? Well, my strength is.
Well, it's really easy to say the budget, right?
Yeah.
But even when the budget situation was better, the money part is still challenging because the needs are there for everybody, and budget is kind of an underlying thing. And then when you add on, okay, even if you commit to something, can you find a person to fill that position? So I think we'd be remiss to only say budget. We also need to mention the challenges around just teacher shortage, right?
yeah. Yeah, and I think we're, you know, we're a unified district, and there's a difference in the community in Doherty Valley than there is in Monte Vista or Cal, or, you know, in the comprehensive high school feeder patterns. And that's it. I think it's a strength. I keep going there because I am an optimist, but it's also a challenge because it's bringing different, not just different communities, but different perspectives together in a way that, in a unifying way, as we, as a district leader would need to do, be able to see all the parts.
Well, I think communication we have a fabulous communication department and communication director that do a great job. I think it continues to be a challenge, to building on what Rachel said, to be able to communicate specifically and clearly to the community so that they understand the real challenges that we're facing, whether it's with you know, money or staffing or any of those things. Because the first thing that happens is people start speculating, and then if we don't have a succinct communication out there about what we're dealing with and why and all of that, then that's when it becomes a problem. So I think we continue to have challenges with that. I think we've come a long way because we have a capable department that handles a lot of that. But for the board, a lot of times I think people don't understand why maybe we're having to do certain things, and being able to communicate that clearly to a community who is very diverse is a challenge.
Any other challenges as you think about the new superintendent walking in the door? Any, you know, things that, you know, that person is really going to have the skill set and ability to be successful in navigating?
Yeah, I think that one thing too is, and I know this is across all districts, but is that we're still, you know, I think we've survived the pandemic, but we're still dealing with the collateral damage of it. And so, you know, when we look at some of our standardized testing, and we look at the discrepancies in different demographics, and seeing how that's grown in some ways, and being able to help us get, I'm not going to say to the finish line because that's not it, but help us get through this, dealing with the damage of the pandemic.
Yeah, good.
A couple of the other areas that I think are, that are more, maybe more granular, but that are sort of at the forefront right now is grade reform. So we're in that process, and that tends to be kind of a hot button for especially parents. So that's something that the new superintendent will probably be dealing with. And also, we're hit hard in our special education because we don't have enough staff, and there's sites that, you know, are short-staffed, and these are our most vulnerable students who need the most support, and it continues to be a big issue for us. And I know a lot of other school districts in the state, but that's another one that, you know, I'm sure the superintendent would be paying attention to.
Good. Any others?
You know, we've got, we've been taking notes, maybe about 75 notes in terms of characteristics and strengths and challenges. And we will continue to collect that from you if you send us anything at all. This gives you a really good sampling of what we do in those Zoom meetings and why they're so interactive and beneficial to us and ultimately to you, because we ask these same questions, whether it's the principals or the student leaders, about the strengths of the district, the challenges, and what they're looking for in a superintendent. And so you will enjoy, I think, reading our notes from each of those individual groups, along with then the executive summary that we provide you. But this has been very helpful. And I think we want to wrap up this section of it to see if there's anything else you want to share regarding what you're looking for in a new superintendent, strengths or challenges. Then open it up for any last questions and then go into closed session. So I'll leave it at that for the board to determine any next steps in the open session portion.
I think related to the other things on this same sheet, we already covered them when we were talking about strengths. Don't you agree?
Any other thoughts or?
I have a question regarding the review of the survey. Do you review the survey with the trustees, or should they provide feedback directly to me?
Thank you. Yes, it would, I think it's would be much more helpful unless you're ready to do that now. I think if you look at that survey, if there's any questions on that to send them to Cindy, and do that as soon as possible. It's a pretty traditional template and it's worked pretty well for us, but if there's something that we're missing, we'd like to hear that from the board. We're able to do it right this moment, or you can take some time and just send it directly to Cindy.
Thought of one more thing I'd like to go back to related to things that we're looking for. I think a superintendent that really values the governance team, views the board as you know, partners, and is willing to put time into, you know, like what Coach John does, how he does one-on-ones with each of us, and occasionally we combine them if we have to, but it's that relationship and really not just a board that, oh yeah, we have to go to the board and check the box. I really feel like we get to be not a hands-on board trying to run the district, but in the right place of the policy part.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that has really been so beneficial to me as a board member, to have that connection and for all of us to be connected to the superintendent. And that was one of the things that I thought about when I thought about a new superintendent. It's like, are they going to still do, you know, once a week meetings? Because I really, it was important to me. It worked really, really well. And I hope we can continue with that. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, and then I would flip that too, and a superintendent that's also willing to and wants to build a relationship with the cabinet, with school site staff, with
the
school site
association
admin, with the
leaders.
associations, you know, having, you know, one of the things that that Dr. Malloy's leadership has really helped has been relationships with our union leaders, and someone who has that that nimbleness and understanding to be able to build strong relationships.
Sorry, I detoured us, but I thought it was important to bring it up.
Well, those are great. They're really good
Good
points.
point.
Okay,
How,
so what
how are you
else?
gonna consolidate all the questions like 2 through 5? Because that could be a pretty big array. Are you gonna try to get more general, or are you gonna list them all out?
When you say 2 through 5, what are you referring to?
On the survey, sorry.
Okay, well, maybe Cindy, this is the time you can put that survey up. Let's see.
So keep going, yeah, a little farther.
Page.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, so bring that down just a little bit, Cindy, if you could. So we can see the other direction, I think.
Down is a no.
Yeah, so,
Logan's the one driving it.
okay, thanks, Luca. So, no, they list, just as you have done, each individual will list the strengths that they see and the major challenges. Generally, they'll do that in a narrative form. And so, you will see what each person records. And so, for instance, what you'll see is, what do you view as the strengths of the district? When you view the survey, we view the survey, there may be 100 comments under that, each one of those questions, or maybe more. And so individuals just take the time, they record that, and then it gets consolidated into, if there's 1,000 surveys, what each individual says. We review it also to see if there's anything else that's been left out. But for the most part, community members are pretty consistent with the staff and so forth. But this is the opportunity to kind of set benchmarks about how different groups are feeling about the district.
I think maybe to avoid redundancy with number 4, because I was finding it even as I was looking at them, because I thought that was kind of what we were responding to. Just add what else is important, because what is important for them to know is going to be so much about what's up there in the strengths and the challenges. And so it's really more like, anything else, because then they're not repeating, and you're not having to read the repeats.
So number 4 might say, what?
Is there anything else you think is important, or something like that? So it's sort of like a catch-all add-on, but it's not like people have to repeat what they put in number 2 or number 3.
Okay, good. Very good.
Is there
Very
anything
good.
that you want our next superintendent to know about?
Okay. If we roll through that survey, see if there's any other comments. So here we're just asking people to rank this. And then what we do for the board in the executive summary is we provide the top 5 rankings of that. You'll see everything, but so this is pretty helpful too,
Before you start with this, I want to kind of go back to the number 4, because as I'm reading it, the number 2 is about district, number 3 is about challenges, number 4 is about community. So maybe it's not the what else, but it's leading the question with community rather than with what's important. Because there's a difference between district and community from my standpoint.
I think you're right, but I think when people are reading it, they're gonna be interchangeable at first. So unless we want to be a little bit more descriptive on like specifically district, specifically community, I don't know.
Because I'm thinking about how we all answered it, right? And we started with, we have a really engaged community that cares about education and the kids. And then that's
Right.
really repetitive with, I think, the kind of things that are going to come out in number 4 or number 3, right? Because we also, it relates to the challenges.
Okay, that's fair. Sorry, I'll let you.
I do see your point. I just think that people are quickly going into it.
Yeah.
And do the same thing. Yeah. What Rachel said.
Because I think we'll get a lot of see above and stuff like that, which just.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, Dennis, you can continue.
Yeah, so are we changing number 4 or not?
Yeah. I mean, we wanted to change it to what additional.
Well, it depends on, if it's just Jetsy and I think so, there's 3 other people.
Well, no,
What
I
do you
mean, I
guys
think that, yeah.
Read it as the community, not the superintendent. It's
Yeah.
what you want the superintendent to know about. I didn't see it as a repetitive, but.
I was just focused on how we were answering it, because when we were having, when they asked us, what are the strengths and then what are the challenges, I thought we were following along in this survey. And pretty much anything we would have said in number 4, we covered. Now, if you don't think the average person's going to do the same thing, then leave it as it is.
What else is?
Yeah.
And that's what I was suggesting.
I think simply the addition of the word else is
Okay.
what else is.
Okay, and I would agree with that. So I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same
Okay.
page.
Yeah.
All
it's a-
right. Okay, should we move on?
Yes, please.
Okay, good. And then Logan, we just scroll down to the next section. These are just rank orders and pretty traditional, but you can see like transformational, the experiences, and this is helpful. I don't know if there's any. This is pretty traditional. In the next grouping, people are just ranking this. Leadership, so these qualities. You can see is accessible to parents, visible, a coach, instructional leader. It's interesting to see how the community views. And when we say community, we're really talking about anybody that fills this survey out. It'll be compiled.
It's really hard to prioritize those
It
things.
is, but we
Oh.
force it. We force the prioritization. And this is interesting. These are characteristics. You see courageous in there, visionary, equity, empathetic. Really, they're all important, aren't they? But we will find there's a number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And some are very close, but so this we found to be helpful. And then Logan is there, and that's it. And so when what you will see is an executive summary from us that provides a summary of all this online data, but you will also get the individual comments, which could be hundreds of pages. But you'll have an executive summary. But there'll be a rising to the top of things that are most important in people's minds. So that's the online survey.
Can I ask a question about the survey in terms of how we are planning on distributing the survey?
Yes. Thank you. This is done, we'll work with Logan and Cindy, and immediately after, there'll be a website that's created, and we have a template. And so on the website, it'll have the search process, it'll have the timeline, and it'll have a link to this survey. So that's number 1. Number 2 is we work with the district to make sure that it gets out to all the parents and community members in some way that this survey is available. And sometimes there's phone messages, and there are different ways to do that to staff and to parents and to students. And so we really rely on the district to figure out the best way to just get that word out. And then in that communication, there's usually just a simple link. So the board is interested in your input. There's a survey, and then the link will be right there. And so they can take it on the link that any communication that you send out.
So I would really encourage us to, in addition to thinking through the district's push out of it, that we do something intentional with each site, whether it's each principal puts it out as a standalone message is probably the best way. And then decide whether we also put it in the newsletters that some of the PTAs publish or not. But I think we need that school touch, because in our efforts with the parcel tax campaign, I am noticing that there are a whole lot of people that don't read anything from the district. It comes from the site. If we want their input, we've got to do both
And I would encourage,
in a timely manner.
and I would encourage more than just one.
Yeah.
Send out, right? Like, because people are getting so many emails, they might miss something.
But yeah, not buried in something, but something really standalone.
And this will go out to our students too, or will they have the opportunity? Okay.
Yeah. And then I think, and John doing something too to the union leadership, to saying here, please, you communicate to your association members directly also. So there's multiple ways that it comes to people.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I think we're done with the survey, and at this point in time, we want to, if there's nothing else, we want to adjourn to closed session. It should not be a long closed session, but it's just relative to a few personnel matters.
Can I just circle back, because that's what I seem to be doing all meeting, with the challenge, is declining enrollment. It's just something we didn't mention. And I know that
That's tied with. funding.
yeah, that ties into funding, but it is, and it's something that, I don't know, certainly the majority of 80% of districts in California, so anyone in California would be aware of that challenge, but just to name it, especially if it is someone coming from out of state.
Right.
All right,
Got
so
it.
The funding.
Yeah. Okay.
I do want to note before you go to closed session that you will not be returning to open session because there will be no report out. So this is the end of open session today.
Okay, all right, great. We don't need to take motion, so we just adjourn.